Welcome to Movie Recaps. Today I will show you a comedy drama film from 2012 titled This Is 40. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins with Pete and Debbie hooking up in their shower. Pete claims that he took the Viagra today, which is why he's so energized, but Debbie refuses to melt and walks out. She felt that now that Pete doesn't find her attractive, he needs to take the Viagra to keep him going for a long time. Pete claims that this isn't the case and that it just comes with age. However, Debbie believes that Pete's fast food and sweets are to blame for his lack of enthusiasm. Today is Debbie's birthday and she is 40 years old, although she rarely reveals anyone her age because she doesn't want to get old too quickly. Nevertheless, Pete is also 40 years old and his birthday is coming up this week. They have two daughters together. Sadie is 8 years old and Charlotte is a teenager. The sisters always fight with each other. Pete and Debbie begin to argue about minor issues as they grow older and their preferences begin to diverge. The kind of music that Debbie likes, Pete doesn't like them at all. The next day, Debbie goes to her shop where two girls named Desi and Jody work as co-workers. Debbie discovers that about $12,000 of the goods she sells is stolen. Debbie couldn't believe it when Jody told her that she didn't know anything and that it was possible that Desi had stolen the money. Desi used to be a really wonderful girl who always worked with honesty. Pete, on the other hand, owns a music store where he sells old albums, but his business isn't doing so well these days. He called the help of several old rock musicians to promote his business, but because people are no longer interested in old albums, his strategy fails miserably. Pete's Emmy is not being filled on time as a result of his business loss, and he may have to sell his home because he didn't want to put Debbie's intentions in jeopardy. Pete doesn't tell her about all of his debt. The next day, Debbie informs Pete that they should now live a good and happy life together and stop fighting like this. They create some rules such as exercising every day and Pete giving up sweets. Debbie will also have to give up smoking and they will both spend more time with their girls. Pete had to stop sending money to his father since he spends it on liquors. Pete and Debbie have agreed to abide by the rules. At night, while checking the shop CCTV, Debbie tells Pete that $12,000 is missing from her shop. She suspects Desi of stealing the money, but she can't directly blame her. Her shop was getting more profits because of Desi. On checking the CCTV, Debbie came to know that Desi often hooks up with some of her customers because Desi was getting more profits. That's why Debbie doesn't have any problem with that. The next day, Pete pays a visit to his father Larry, who is the father of 3 more children. Pete informs Larry that he is unable to send them any more money. Larry starts to emotionally blackmailing him and under compulsion he has to give him money. Pete keeps this from Debbie because he knows if he tells her she will be upset with him. Debbie also pays a visit to her biological father Oliver, who had divorced Debbie's mother and married someone else several years before. A few days later, Debbie informs her daughters that they need to lower the cost of their house, so she's going to cut off the Wi-Fi and only use the computers for 30 minutes a day. Shelley gets very angry on hearing this because she used to spend most of her time on the computer. Debbie and Pete have become irritated as a result of their career and personal troubles, so they go to a resort on weekends to take a vacation from their stressful lives. Debbie tells Pete that she brought some intoxicating cookies with her and the two of them eat them and have a great time. While intoxicated, they have injection games too. They returned home after spending some time in the resort and their mundane lives resumed. One day, Jody informs Debbie that Desi has purchased a very expensive clothes as well as a car and that she most likely stole all of the money from the shop. Debbie became suspicious of Desi and inquired about her clothing, which Desi claimed she had created herself. Debbie sees that Desi's balloons are huge. She feels that Desi must have gone with some expensive operations, but Desi said that it's just natural. Sadie brings her friend to her house and asks for permission to turn on the Wi-Fi, but Debbie refuses, causing Sadie to become enraged and have an argument with her. Debbie is enraged by this and takes both Sadie's phone and computer, where she discovers that in school a boy named Joseph commented negatively on her photos. When Pete gets a call from his shop, he learns that the albums have sold much fewer this time and his business has gone into even more loss. Pete doesn't tell anything to Debbie, but the next day she finds out that Pete's financial situation is dire and that his business is losing money. Pete continues to pay money to his father. After that, Debbie goes to the doctor for a checkup and discovers that she is pregnant with her 3rd child. Debbie is shocked when she hears this because she did not want a child at the moment. Debbie is unsure how she would break the news to Pete. The next day, when Pete and Debbie arrive at Sadie's school, Debbie asks Pete if he wants more than 2 children. Pete says he only wants 1 child, although 2 is acceptable, and he has no desire for a 3rd child. Upon hearing this, Debbie decides not to tell him about her pregnancy and keeps it a secret from Pete. After a While Debbie runs into the same student named Joseph on campus who used to remark on Sadie's photos, Debbie warns him and tells him to behave well with Sadie, but the boy starts crying, so Debbie walks away. At night, Debbie walks to the pub with Desi and they have a great time. Debbie inquires about the stolen money in the bar, but then a boy appears thinking Debbie is single and asks if she wants to hook up. Debbie tells him that she can't do it because she is married. After the party, Debbie asks Desi if she knows anything about theft at the shop. Desi simply refuses, claiming that she did not steal anything, so Debbie asks her from where does she got so much money. Desi reveals that she hooks up with peoples by taking money. She also claims that it was none other than the innocent-looking Jody who stole from the shop. She also takes drugs. Hearing this, Debbie also admits that she is pregnant, though she hasn't informed Pete yet. Desi advises her to tell him when you guys hook up because it will make him happy. At night, Debbie goes to Pete, but Pete ignores her. Debbie is upset and she begins to believe that Pete no longer loves her. Pete was already concerned about his business when Debbie began arguing with him, causing him to become agitated and begin arguing with her again. The next day, when Pete is dropping off his kids at school, Joseph's mother Catherine approaches him and tells him that he should look after his wife. Hearing this, Pete gets angry. He starts abusing Catherine. Debbie, on the other hand, meets Jody, who confesses to stealing the money to acquire drugs while she was still drunk. Knowing this, Debbie fires her from the job. Later, Debbie receives a message from the principal and is called to the school. When she arrives, Catherine accuses both of them of abusing her and her son. However, Pete and Debbie put on innocent faces and claim that they haven't done anything wrong. When Catherine hears this, she becomes enraged and begins abusing the principal as well. When the principal sees this, he says, "Yes, I'm the guilty one and you're all innocent," and sends them home. Sadie becomes enraged when she discovers that his parents have been reading her messages and have threatened Joseph, so she angry with them. The next day was Pete's birthday. Debbie tells Pete that their fights are caused by their parents and that if they both treat their parents nicely there will be no fight between them. The next day is Pete's birthday celebration and all of the guests had arrived, including Pete's father Larry and Debbie's father Oliver. Everything was going well until the parents starts arguing. Larry explains to Oliver why he hasn't seen Debbie in 7 years and why despite his wealth he isn't helping Debbie and Pete. Debbie becomes enraged and tells Larry to stop begging for money from her son, which leads to another fight between Pete and Debbie. After a while, Pete cuts his cake and Debbie begins to smoke in secret. Sadie sees her mom and asks, "What are you doing?" Debbie's friend makes the mistake of saying that she shouldn't smoke cigarettes while pregnant, which is heard by the entire family, and Pete becomes enraged because she didn't tell about her pregnancy. Pete rode out on his bicycle. Debbie tries to find Pete, who is angry and riding his bike very fast. In anger, suddenly a man opens the door of his car and Pete bumps into it. Pete gets into a fight with a man, but the man flees after striking him in the face. When Debbie arrives at time and takes him to the hospital in the waiting area, Debbie feels that she shouldn't behave like this with Pete. Larry says to Debbie that you guys should forgive each other, live a happy life. When Debbie meets with Pete, she apologizes to him. Pete claims he is overjoyed at the news of having a third child, but he is angry because Debbie did not inform him of her pregnancy, and because of their financial situation they will have to sell their home and move into a smaller one. Their relationship gradually improved and their family remains happy. Movie ends. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a